You ever been betrayed? Yeah, I said it. Betrayed by people you gave your heart to, your time, your trust. And what did they do with it? They dropped it, stepped on it, acted like it never meant a thing. See, I don't need to know the whole story to know this. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And when they betray you, don't chase, don't beg, don't even explain, just elevate. Because here's the truth, they didn't just lose you. They lost everything that came with you, your loyalty, your vision, your love, your prayers, your presence. That's not a loss, that's a catastrophe, but they won't realize it now. Oh no, not yet. They'll feel it when your silence gets louder than your words. They'll feel it when your glow keeps rising and their access stays denied. And one day, they'll look back and say, damn, we had that, and we let it go, but by then, you'll be gone, healed, whole. Winning, and when they try to come back, remember this, you're not bitter, you're better, not because you forgot what they did, but because you remember who you are, so don't waste your breath trying to make them regret it. Live in such a way, they can't help but regret it. See, when people do you wrong, your first instinct is to speak up, explain yourself, defend your name, lay it all out there so they understand what they lost and why they're wrong. But I'm telling you right now, that's not your assignment. Your job isn't to make them see it. Your job is to be it. You feel me? Because when you know who you are and what you bring to the table, you stop trying to convince folks who walked away from the feast. You stop trying to write chapters in books that folks already closed. What you do instead is rise, not with anger, not with spite, not even with noise, but with discipline, with purpose, with poise, because the real proof ain't in what you say, it's in what you become. The real statement is your success, it's your peace, it's your glow, it's waking up and not needing validation from people who had the chance to ride with you and chose to get off the train. Elevation means you stop making announcements and start making moves. That's what power looks like, not loud, just undeniable. You ever notice how people who did you wrong always seem confused when you stop talking to them, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop showing up with open arms? Start showing up with boundaries. They look around wondering what changed, but you're not here to hold press conferences about your worth. You're not here to hand out explanations like flyers at a bus stop. Your growth is not a group project, and your healing don't need a panel discussion. Elevation means taking your story out of their hands and writing your own script. It means realizing that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's maturity, it's self-respect, it's choosing your peace over their chaos, your future over their confusion. And every time you choose not to explain, not to respond, not to react, you're choosing to rise. And when you rise, you create a gap between you and the drama, a gap so wide they can't reach you with their small talk, their gossip, their guilt trips, because you're not on that level anymore. You outgrew it. And that's the beauty of elevation. It lifts you above the noise without ever needing to make a sound. Now let's be real, it's tempting to go back, it's tempting to prove your point, to give them a piece of your mind, to show them you were always solid while they were temporary. But that's not elevation, that's reaction, and you don't live there no more. You don't move from impulse, you move from vision, from clarity, from direction. See, when you're locked in on where you're going, you don't have time to argue with folks stuck in where you've been. You don't go back to broken bridges trying to explain why you crossed. You just walk on, because the bridge wasn't meant to hold you, it was meant to break, so you could fly. And flying doesn't come with commentary, it comes with altitude. So don't waste your wings explaining why you left the ground. Use that energy to soar higher. And if they ever look up and wonder how you got there, they'll have to answer that question without you, because that chapter is closed, and you're too busy writing a new one on higher ground, without detours, without explanations, without permission, just purpose. That's what it means to elevate beyond the need to be understood and into the freedom of being unbothered. What they didn't understand was that when you walked away, you didn't leave empty-handed. You didn't just pack up your pain and your silence. You took your light, your energy, your presence, your faith, your encouragement, your belief. You took your covering, because you weren't just another body in the room, you were the difference in the room. You were the reason things felt grounded, the reason the chaos didn't fully consume everything. They never noticed how peace came when you came, how the atmosphere shifted when you walked in, how blessings started showing up when you started showing up. They thought it was coincidence, they thought it was random, but what they didn't realize is that it was you carrying that favor, carrying that clarity, carrying that strength. And when they pushed you away, they didn't just lose a person, they lost a shield, they lost a storm breaker, they lost someone who prayed for them, even when they didn't know it, who stood in the gap when they didn't deserve it, who gave more than was ever asked. And now that you're gone, they don't even realize the full cost of what they lost, yet they thought you were replaceable, like you were a role to be recast or a seat to be filled. But what they didn't know is that you were the whole foundation. You weren't just part of the structure, you were the reason it stood so long. They confused your loyalty for weakness, your grace for naivety, your consistency for convenience. But what they missed is that your value was never about how loud you were. It was about how solid you stayed through storms, through seasons, through silence. And when you left, that foundation cracked because you were the one holding things together behind the scenes, in the shadows, when nobody was clapping, when nobody was watching. Your worth wasn't in what you said, it was in what you carried, in what you endured, in what you kept alive with nothing but faith and fire. And now that they can't feel your presence, they'll start feeling the absence, and absence is a powerful teacher, especially when it comes from someone who never wanted to leave but had to protect what was left of them. They won't feel it all at once, no, it won't hit them like a storm, it'll come slow, like a quiet ache, like something's missing. But they can't quite name it. Conversations won't hit the same, laughter won't linger as long, peace won't stay in the room the way it used to. They'll scroll through memories trying to remember how it felt to be covered, trying to remember the sound of someone who truly cared, who saw past the mask, who showed up when there was nothing to gain. They'll look around at all the noise, all the replacements, all the distractions, and still feel that one space that only you filled, because Val, you isn't loud, Val, you isn't desperate, Val, you stays with the one who carried it. And now that you've elevated, now that you've taken all of you with you, they'll realize you weren't just someone they lost, you were someone they were never prepared to lose, someone who brought the light, someone who was the light. And when light leaves, darkness is the only thing left behind. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is say nothing at all, because silence carries a weight that noise can never match. Silence doesn't beg for attention, it commands it without effort, without announcement, without explanation. When you go quiet after betrayal, after disrespect, after the storm, people start to notice, because now they can't predict you, now they can't access you, and now they can't pull on the same version of you. They used to drain. Your silence becomes the echo of every moment they took you for granted, every time they laughed, while you cried, every time they dismissed your love, your loyalty, your presence. Now your silence walks in the room first, and it says more than your voice ever could. It says, I'm not arguing with what I've outgrown, I'm not repeating myself for those who never listened, and I'm not entertaining chaos when I've found peace. People confuse silence with weakness, but what they don't realize is that silence is strength dressed in discipline. It's the patience to let your actions speak while your words stay still. It's the wisdom to understand not every battle is worth fighting, especially when the war has already been won in your spirit. You don't need to clear your name in every room where they try to stain it, because truth walks with time, and silence walks with dignity. When you stop reacting, when you stop defending yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you're not losing anything, you're leveling up, because peace doesn't come from being heard. Peace comes from knowing who you are in the absence of noise. It's when you can sit with yourself and not feel the urge to perform or prove or plead. That's when you've tapped into real power. Your silence tells the world that you're not available for manipulation, that your energy is reserved for progress, not pettiness, and it shakes people because they expected you to fight back, to scream, to post, to beg, and instead you went quiet, you went inward, you healed in silence, you grew in silence, and now they have no access to the version of you they created. They only get to watch the version of you that you built from ashes with no applause and no audience, just focus, because silence ain't passive, silence is intentional, silence is strategy, and silence is the sound of someone choosing peace over performance every single time. And let me tell you something else, your silence will reveal more about them than it ever will about you. When you stop engaging, when you stop feeding the fire, when you just let people sit with the space you used to fill, they start getting uncomfortable, because silence forces reflection, it forces truth to come to the surface, and they can't hide from it anymore. They can't use your reactions as a distraction. They can't use your emotions to dodge accountability. Now they have to face themselves in the quiet. And that's where conviction lives. That's where regret starts to whisper. That's where they start to hear all the things you used to say, all the ways you used to love, all the chances you used to give. Silence is like a mirror, and some people can't stand what's looking back at them, because it shows them who they were and who they lost. It reminds them that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. And now that your silence is louder than your voice, they'll learn that power doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers. And even in that whisper, the message is clear. You're not mad, you're not bitter, you're just unavailable. The nonsense now, everybody wants revenge, they want to clap back, they want to prove a point, they want to show the ones who hurt them that they messed with the wrong soul. But what they don't understand is that the most powerful form of revenge doesn't come with noise, it doesn't come with shouting or stunts or schemes. It comes with healing, it comes with doing the work in silence, it comes with breaking generational pain and building personal peace. Because when you heal, you remove their grip from your life, you disconnect from the identity they tried to chain you to, and you create a version of yourself they can't reach, can't trigger, can't control. Healing means choosing yourself even when the wound is still fresh. It means showing up for your future even when your past still aches. And every day you keep rising with grace and not vengeance. You show the world that you are not defined by who broke you, but by who you became after it. Because real revenge doesn't scream, real revenge glows, real revenge gets up when nobody thought you would, and builds a life so full of love, so full of light, so full of peace. They can't even recognize you anymore. They expected you to stay bitter, to stay broken, to spend your days plotting your response, rehearsing your pain, hiding behind anger and pain and disappointment. But you flipped the script. Instead you built boundaries. Instead you chose therapy. Instead you prayed. Instead you faced every dark part of yourself. They tried to ignite and said no more, and every step you took toward healing was a step away from their chaos. Every time you said no when you used to say yes, every time you chose rest over retaliation, joy over judgment, stillness over sabotage, you were healing. And they didn't expect that. They didn't expect you to become the version of yourself that isn't triggered by their name or moved by their games. They didn't expect you to rise with elegance, with purpose, with peace, because that kind of transformation is rare, and it's powerful, and it's permanent. It tells them that they don't have the kind of influence they thought they did anymore. It reminds them that they were only a chapter, not the author. And now you're holding the pen, now you're rewriting everything. And you're doing it without needing to burn anything down to feel powerful again. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to talk about what they did. You don't need to defend yourself against lies that were designed to distract you, because healing taught you something deeper. It taught you that freedom isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about becoming so whole, so rooted, so aligned that nothing they say can shake what you've built, because you built it with truth, you built it with pain, you built it brick by brick with hands that used to tremble but now carry peace. And when you walk in that room with that calm, that presence, that purpose, they'll feel the difference. They'll see what they lost, but more importantly, you'll see what you gained. You'll see that all that pain produced purpose, that all that rejection was divine redirection, that all that healing made you untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you're complete. And that right there is the real win. That's the revenge they can't take back. That's The justice that don't need a courtroom, that's the moment you realize healing isn't just survival, it's resurrection, it's power, it's becoming everything they tried to bury and rising anyway, like the whole storm bowed to your recovery. There comes a point when access expires, when grace has been stretched and patience has been tested, and you look around and realize not everybody deserves a seat in your next season, not because you're petty, not because you're unforgiving, but because elevation requires separation, and the ones who hurt you don't get to walk with you into the healing. They don't get to celebrate what they tried to sabotage. They don't get to eat from a table they refused to help set. So now you're moving different, not bitter, just better, not closed off, just careful, not revengeful, just wise, because your peace cost too much to risk it again. And the truth is, you can love somebody from a distance, you can forgive them without allowing them back into your circle, you can wish them well while still walking away, and that's the maturity they never expected, because they thought you'd come running, they thought you'd fold, they thought you'd break, and instead you built something stronger without them. And now they don't get the privilege of proximity, they get the pain of perspective, they get to watch what they could have been part of, and feel every ounce of what they forfeited. You see, they thought it was personal when you left, they thought it was about ego, they thought it was about proving a point, but it wasn't. It was about protection. It was about finally understanding that not everybody who came with you was meant to stay with you. And just because they witnessed your growth doesn't mean they contributed to it. Some people were just bystanders to the breakthrough. Some people were simply lessons disguised as loyalty. And now that you've grown, now that you've healed, now that you've built a life rooted in truth and peace and purpose, you don't need them to validate it. You don't need them to applaud it. You don't need them to understand it. You just need to keep walking and let the fruit of your journey speak louder than any explanation ever could. They'll see it in your joy. They'll feel it in your absence. They'll realize they were standing next to greatness and didn't even recognize it until it was gone. And that's not your burden to carry anymore. That's theirs. And sometimes the greatest thing you can do for your future is protect it from your past, no matter how familiar it feels. And when they finally look up and see you thriving, when they hear your name spoken in rooms they never imagined you'd reach, when they see your light shining in places they never thought you'd survive, they'll remember they had a front row seat and still missed the show. They'll remember that you were real, that you were solid, that you were there, and they let you go. They'll remember the love you gave, the chances you offered, the prayers you spoke over their life when they didn't even ask for it. And now all they get is distance, now all they get is memories, now all they get is access denied. And that's not out of hate, that's out of healing, because healing makes you selective, peace makes you protective, and growth makes you unavailable to what no longer serves you. So let them watch, let them witness the glow, the rise, the resilience. Let them feel the consequence of underestimating someone who is sent to bless them. And remind yourself every step you take forward that closure isn't about them understanding, it's about you accepting that not everybody deserves a second chance at what they wasted the first time, and that your journey is yours to guard, not to explain.